From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Rosen.
Very, very happy that you could join us today on a night after some really special moments were brought back and relived just last night at Yankee Stadium.
That's right.
Well, first off, we want to tell you that Kenny Graham's on the other side of the glass right now, only for just a few moments, because he's actually double dipping between here and the big studio where the Staten Island Soccer Report is going to be signing on around the next hour or so, or half hour or so. And also
on Channel 35, I believe.
I think so, yeah. So in the meantime, we're going to let you know that you could still contact us through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and also see old episodes of ours on YouTube. And you can also contact us on Snapchat. You can see us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and contact us through Instagram and Snapchat.
I just want to wish a belated Happy Mother's Day to all mothers around the world, including mine, Eileen Rosen, who's a special lady to me, who has raised me, for 31 plus years and has done an amazing job as always. Raising me and my brother. She's such, she's just an amazing individual, and I wish I had more things to describe her, but she really helped me in so many situations. When I've gone through the positives and the negatives, she was always there for me, and no matter what was going down. And she just, I love you for everything that you've done for me, for taking care of me, for feeding me, clothing me, giving me life, and just being supportive, and just a beautiful person inside and out. I love you.
And special Happy Mother's Day wishes, belated Mother's Day wishes to my own mom, Estela Ramirez Hixson. Felicidades y te quiero mucho, mamá. This is a woman who has really, really defined the quintessence, defined what being someone with a tough skin is all about, because she's had to endure a lot in the time that she's raised me. Even now, she's still giving me a lot of words of wisdom and advice. So they are always duly noted, and for that, I love her a lot more. I also want to give Mother's Day wishes to my beloved Jennifer McCourt-Deroux, who's a proud mom of 3 kids, one of whom is a United States Marine. And another set of happy Mother's Day wishes to her mom, Beth McCourt, who unfortunately lost her husband recently. So we want to continue to send out condolences to Jen and Mrs. McCourt and the rest of the McCourt family. He was quite the character, let's put it that way. But in this day and age, as we always know, we have to move on with stuff. And when we say move on, we have to focus on the task at hand, which is what's going on
in sports.
This moment in sports. We mentioned before that last night Derek had his number retirement ceremony. Do you know that the Yankees are now the only franchise in Major League Baseball to have every single one of their single numbers retired, numbers 1 through 9, and, numbers 1 through 10 to be exact?
Well, one, of course, was Billy Martin. Number 2, Derek Jeter. Number 3, Babe
was the Babe.
Babe. Number 4 was Lou Gehrig. Number 5 was Joe DiMaggio. Number 6, Roger Maris. Number 7, Mickey Mantle. Number 8 was Bill Dickey. And, of course...
Actually, number 6 was Joe Torre.
It was Joe... No, 6 was... Actually, it was Roger Maris.
Nope.
It was Roger Maris.
Actually, Roger Maris won number 9.
No, it was 6.
Nope.
It was 6.
It really was number 9. Roger Maris really did number 9. He
really
did wear number 9. In
10
fact,
was Phil Rizzuto, and number 8 was, of course,
Yogi
Bill
Berra
Dickey.
and Bill Dickey.
Yeah.
Yep. And 9, I do know for a fact, was worn by Roger Maris. Joe Torre had his number 6 retired just, I think, about a year ago. by the Yankees.
But they also retired guys like Thurman Munson, Casey Stengel, Mr. October, Reggie Jackson was a part of Joe
Munson,
Yeah.
Whitey Ford,
Yeah.
Jorge Posada, Mattingly's number 23.
Bernie.
There was also, Bernie's number 51, Reggie's number 44, Pettit's number 46.
In fact, the Yankees have the most retired numbers, or
Of any franchise in baseball, and I think of any franchise in professional sports, if I'm not mistaken.
and they're one of the top 5 teams in terms of Hall of Famers that have made it, including along with the St. Louis Cardinals, the San Francisco Giants. Of course, had some great Hall of Famers like Willie McCovey, and of course Willie Mays. You know, but no, the Yankees.
And of course, Casey Stengel's number 37 was also retired.
When it comes to ceremonies and retirements, the Yankees do it better than probably any club, and this is coming from a Met fan. They really know how to honor players.
Yep.
With the plaques, the pomp and the ceremonies, the the adulation that the fans give their retired players. It's nothing like any other team I've ever seen.
And the circumstances around Derek's retirement, leading up to his number being retired, really drew so much attention. There was even a letter that he penned through the Players Tribune to the city, thanking them for all of the support that they had given him for so many years. And
that's actually his magazine. He created the Players Tribune, and it's very unique. It's one of the only publications where players, current and past, give their perspectives on all the different topics that concern professional athletes. No other newspaper has actually done something like this before. It's really unique. If you get a chance to read the Players Tribune, they're really in-depth articles that you can look at. And on top of which,
I'm looking up Wikipedia right now. It turns out number 6 that was retired was worn by Joe Torre, and number 9, which Roger Maris wore for 7 out of his 12 years in the majors, was retired, and it was Roger Maris that wore that number.
All right. Well,
although he was a very complicated superstar and also a very pretty much a pariah when you think about it among Yankee fans.
Because of the fact that he broke Babe Ruth's single-season record. The year him and Mantle were competing, knocking homers left and right, the movie 61, that was actually written by great actor and big Yankee fan, Billy Crystal. And it was detailing the year in which Mantle and Maris went head-to-head, toe-to-toe to break Ruth's record. And there were fans. There was a fan that dressed up like Babe Ruth up in the stands that threw a chair right down at Roger Maris.
Yeah.
To show how pissed he was for trying to break the Bambino's record. But at the end, he didn't let anything get in his way.
Yeah.
He had the single season record for the longest amount of years, up until, of course, Mark McGwire in '98 broke the record. And members of Maris's family were actually at Busch Stadium when that took place, when he broke the record.
Yep.
And of course, there's a bit of a dubious distinction,
because of all of the PEDs that McGwire wound up taking back in the day.
But look at all the other players that were retired by the Yankees too. You talk about Billy Martin, a guy that was hired and fired more times than any person I can even count.
And he was also a very important role player in their championship teams back in the 50s, mostly as the second baseman.
Lou Gehrig, who up until 2003 had the record for the most consecutive games ever played, up until Cal Ripken actually broke that record playing for the Baltimore Orioles. And then you have number 5, Joey D.
Some say he is the greatest player that may have ever lived.
56-game consecutive hitting streak, which still is held up to this day. No person has broken that record.
And it doesn't look like anyone is ever going to break that record either. Guess how many times, or guess what was the most amount of times that Joe DiMaggio struck out in one season, just to show you how superior of a contact hitter he was.
I don't know. How many?
30 times.
That's how good.
And the year he had his 56-game hitting streak, he struck out 13 times.
And he also won the Triple Crown in his career, too, which is very
He
tough.
was the quintessential contact hitter. Great power. Although, if it hadn't been for him playing just 13 years in the majors because he had to serve in the war, he probably could have hit about 400 to 500 home runs. And also, if it hadn't been for all of his injuries, because he missed his share of games because he hurt his legs, he probably would have hit about 400 to 450 home runs.
And what about Mickey Mantle? Of course, yes, he was a great player on the field, but off the field, he was a tabloid waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
He had issues with alcohol.
Major issues with alcohol and with cheating on his wife. He also was not necessarily the most cordial person to talk to. Yep. In fact, there was a story that came out in the Daily News many years ago about how the Mick actually blew off 2 kids who had waited quite a few minutes outside of the Yankee locker room just to get his autograph.
Which is something right there. But you know what? I don't want to bash too much on Mantle, and it probably sounds like the people that I just did, and I'm sorry if I did that. But, you know, with Mantle, he had his good days on the field, and he had his bad moments too, that people will remember him for.
Yeah, speaking of bad-mouthing, a certain someone who shall remain nameless just could not get over the fact that Jeter wound up having his number retired and had such pomp and circumstance dedicated to him. He went so far as to sarcastically call him Derek Jerky, which I really did not appreciate whatsoever.
Was this a person at WFAN?
No. To my surprise, it definitely was not a radio personality. I'm not going to reveal who the person is, but it was painfully obvious that they let their affiliation with another franchise get in the way of good judgment.
Well, I don't know why you would call him a jerk, because Jeter was the complete opposite of a jerk. In fact, he was very charitable with people. He was good with kids. On top of that, he never had a negative tabloid or story ever. He kept his private life just as clean as he did as his public life on the field.
Yep.
And he was one of the greatest hitters. 20 years with one team, 15 years as 17 years as an All-Star, 5 World Series championships. And this guy's a jerk.
The only player to be the most valuable player both in the All-Star game and in the World Series the same year. Just to give you an idea about how tight those 1990s and 2000s Yankees were, Bernie, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettit, Mariano Rivera, Paul O'Neill, all of those guys who won either 4 or 5 championships with Jeter showed up at the retirement ceremony yesterday. Even the guy that first scouted Jeter in high school showed up at the number retirement ceremony last night.
It was just apropos, it was about time. We were all wondering when this was going to happen, when he got into the later years of his career. And unfortunately, he ended three of his last, 4 years without being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that was unfortunate to end his career like that. But at the same time, he had such an amazing career.
And it was obvious that his parents really did raise him right. For one, his father, Dr. Charles Jeter, who's a well-known psychologist/psychiatrist, really taught him the ways of life, if you will.
Respect.
Yeah. And for another, his mom, his sister, his nephew, famous for the tipping of the hat at Jeter's last game at Yankee Stadium a couple of years ago, and also his grandmother, all supreme influences in Derek's life. And his new wife, Hannah Jeter, the former Hannah Davis, who was a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, they're expecting their first child together.
Which I'm so happy for him.
Yep, congratulations for the both of them.
Maybe he'll raise a baseball player.
Oh, boy. Yankee fans can only hope that if they have a boy together, that he could be at least half of the player that Derek was. And also, think back to 1992, which was the year that Derek was drafted. Derek was drafted as a 17-year-old. You know who else was in that top 5 of the draft?
Alex Rodriguez, I believe, was
Actually, Alex was drafted the year after Derek.
Yeah,
Alex was
93.
1993. Derek was 1992. Phil Nevin was the first overall pick of the 1992 draft by the Astros. He had a nice career. Some of his best years wound up being with the San Diego Padres. His career lasted at least 12 seasons. Derek lasted 20 years, won 5 titles, had over 3,600 hits, and is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer by the year 2020.
Do you think he'll break the record now that Ken Griffey has at 99.8%?
I think I could go so far as to say he'll be the first former major leaguer to be inducted on every single ballot, 100% of the ballots.
That's going to be tough because, especially to get that in 100, it's because the baseball writers are probably the toughest people to get that type of endorsement from.
Big time.
So,
but if anybody could draw all 100% of those votes, it's definitely Derek.
he's eligible, in 3 more years?
2020 is when he's eligible.
So right there, because you have to be 5 years. I think that's with every sport, a major sport. You have to wait at least 5 years to get that endorsement. Like Brett Favre, he's going to be a first ballot when it comes to Canton, Ohio.
And if I'm not mistaken, in 2019, Mariano Rivera and Andy Pettitte would both be up for eligibility.
I'll be honest, Andy will probably not get in the first ballot.
Andy's a borderline Hall of Fame candidate, but Mariano Rivera, with 652 saves in his career, he is absolutely 100% a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I think what the baseball writers will hold against Andy is the years with the Astros and him and Clemens, that whole Michigaza that they went through with the
they're definitely
PEDs.
going to hold the PED thing against him. Maybe the fact that he was contrite and apologetic, unlike Roger Clemens, might give him a little bit of leeway. And also, his playoff performance. Andy was just a fierce competitor in the playoffs.
There's no doubt about his playoff ability. It's the fact that these baseball writers are so, I wouldn't say, but they are driven by character when it comes to voting for players to go into the Hall of Fame.
Some of it does have to do with character, though. I mean, think of why Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame. It's because, I would say half of it has to do with his character. The other half has to do with the fact that he was just I don't want to say overdosing, but obsessed with PEDs.
What about Rafael Palmeiro, another guy that won't be?
Rafael Palmeiro has 3,000 hits. He is not going in the Hall either.
Mark McGwire right now, Sammy Sosa, because they all came from the steroid era of baseball. And now David Ortiz, when he's up in 4 years too, for the Hall of Fame, that's going to be something right.
He would be eligible in 2022. And I'll tell you right now, because he was such a good guy, David Ortiz will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a given.
All right.
And the fact that he was such a fierce hitter.
Or Manny Ramirez, another guy that will never probably see in the Hall of Fame too.
Even though he should, because he was probably one of the greatest hitters of the modern era. And speaking of baseball, moving on to other stuff, while the Jeter ceremony really was a heartwarming thing to see, and it was also great seeing Don Mattingly give that pre-taped message that was shown on the Yankee Vision scoreboard.
But the fact that the Yankees only won 2 games this week and lost 3 out of 4.
That's another thing. While the ceremony last night was beautiful, the Yankees pitching staff has been ugly. Ugly, ugly, ugly. No more ugly than this past 4-game series against the Astros. Game 2 last night was abysmal. Masahiro Tanaka could not get his breaking ball or his sinker down at any time. Let's see. Thursday night, it was basically Dallas Braden who owned the Yankees for about 6 innings. Dallas Braden is undefeated against the Yankees in his short career.
And then
came Friday night, another lackluster performance by the Yankees. The only saving grace was Game 1 yesterday when Chase Headley had the big blow with that bases-clearing double.
That's right. That was actually the result of the rain game
from Saturday.
From Saturday. And then they lost yesterday by 2 runs.
And even though they took game 1 of that doubleheader, lost in the whole thing was Luis Severino looked really, really shaky. They're talking about how much of a surprise he's been, but I just don't see the kid as starting pitching material.
They were down 8-0 at one point in the second game yesterday. That's how bad things were.
And making matters a little bit more tough for them, Aroldis Chapman is now on the disabled list, and he's not going to be allowed to even do baseball activities for about 3 or 4 weeks, which means Dylan Betances, who's been a little shaky himself, has to be the de facto closer.
And how about next week, though, coming up? They're off tomorrow, but then they head to Kansas City for 3 games, and then they head to Tampa Bay for the weekend series.
And Tampa's been a real thorn on the Yankees' side, especially in St. Petersburg the last few years. So the Yankees really need to be on their guard right now.
As opposed to the Mets, who basically won their first 2 games against one of the absolute worst teams in baseball, the San Francisco Giants. Then they blow a 9th inning lead in the afternoon game on Wednesday, lose 6-5. They're off on Thursday, and they then go on to lose 3 straight in beer country. Milwaukee beats them 7-4, 11-4 on Saturday, and on Sunday, it's 11.
You think the Yankees had problems? The Mets have problems. Just look at this. Yoenis Cespedes, Noah Syndergaard, Steven Matz, Seth Lugo, David Wright, now Jody Familia. That's 6 frontline guys. Not even mentioning Lucas Duda, who just recently came back. That's 7 frontline guys, either pitchers or everyday position players that are on the disabled list right now. And
the lackluster hitting.
And also, actually, yesterday wasn't totally bad because at least they were able to get 9 runs. But when Jacob deGrom pitched those 6 innings, he wound up running into trouble in the 7th, and then the bullpen was what really self-destructed. The same thing could be said about Saturday night, too. Notice the Grand Slam home run that was given up last night, or yesterday rather, and also the bases clearing double that was given up by Hansel Robles on Saturday night. Plain and simple, the Mets pitching, not just the injuries, the pitching staff has been the Mets' number 1 weakness right now, and they have to address it.
And they're coming up on a tough 3-game series starting tonight in the desert playing the Diamondbacks. And on 2 late-night games at 9:40 on Monday and tomorrow. And then Wednesday, they play a late afternoon 3-4 game. They're off Thursday, and they head back home to play the Angels this weekend. And this Sunday actually is Autism Awareness Day at Citi Field. So if you get a chance, definitely buy a ticket, from any of the autism organizations. It benefits organizations that provide for people on the spectrum. So it's a fun day. And what they do is at Citi Field, they have an area by the Modell's area, like a quiet area for kids, because for some kids that are on the spectrum, they have such a sensitivity to loud noises and sounds. So the Mets, it's nice what they do. They give them an area where they can at least have some quiet and all that, and not be have to hear. Deal with all those noises, because it can get very noisy at a ball game. And they have a nice area by the bullpen where they do like arts and crafts, karate demo, and they have also information for parents. So it's a great day, and it's a Sunday, and they're giving out sunglasses. So if you get a chance, get a ticket for this Sunday's game against the Angels.
I've seen the sunglasses through their promos. The sunglasses that they have are pretty cool.
Oh, they're very nice.
Now, as far as other happenings in baseball, the big story, aside from the Yankees and the Mets, is the fact that Bryce Harper got himself a brand new contract, albeit just a 1-year contract.
$24 million.
Mostly because the Nationals did not want to go to salary arbitration with him. So now he's going to be a free agent after next year.
And you know what? He's going to command a big payday.
Some say he could be the first $30 million per year player.
I wouldn't even doubt he'll get a bigger contract than, say, Giancarlo Stanton. And to be honest, he deserves a bigger contract than Giancarlo Stanton does. No offense to Giancarlo Stanton. There was a point when I actually would have not agreed with that statement, when Giancarlo, in the beginning of his career, was worth that kind of money. But I'll be honest now, I don't think he really is worth that kind of payday. And this is the year, by the way, Miami is hosting the All-Star game this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they really want to have a good season, and they want to give people a reason why to come visit their ballpark in an area that used to be the home of the former Orange Bowl. And I've been there several times.
Yeah.
And the place never gets filled out at all.
Nope.
Unless it's like them playing against a New York team, because, you have a lot of transplanted New Yorkers in Florida.
Yeah.
Both Yankees and Mets fans. So, and the parking there, at least they have the garages, but don't park in the neighborhoods. Trust me, if you're going to go to a game, do not park at somebody's house when they have a sign that says, park here for $20. You're out of your mind if you do that.
They used to do that even during the days of the old Orange Bowl, when the University of Miami and the Miami Dolphins had their games there.
It's just, no offense, I don't want to sound like I'm against neighbor. It's a rich cultural neighborhood. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I would not park my car in somebody's garage. By somebody's garage, I would park in one of those parking structures that they have for the team. But all right, let's get into some other sports, starting with the NHL and the postmortem of the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
Who unfortunately last Tuesday lost 4-2, Game 6 at the Garden against the Ottawa Senators, and the move that pretty much changed it all was Mr. Erik Karlsson, who beat Lundqvist on the blocker side with 4:07 remaining in the second period to restore the Senators' 2-goal lead when they were up 3-1. And this was after the Zibanejad goal. They were down 2-0 at this point. And look what happens. Zibanejad gets a huge pass from Matt Zuccarello, skating in front, beating Anderson on the glove side. And then all of a sudden, 4:07 remaining, Karlsson gets pretty much the death knell on the Rangers. And then the third period comes. About 52 seconds in, Chris Kreider beats Anderson on the left side, making it 3-2. And then the Rangers at the very end, the last 2 minutes remaining, they bring in the extra attacker. They tried everything to get that tying goal. But at the end of the day, it was Jean-Gabriel Pageau, the guy who killed us in game killed us in game 2, got the empty netter, and that was it. They lost 4-2 in their home place. In fact, that was the series, 4-2 Ottawa.
If you want to point as to what the turning point of that series was, look at games 1, 2, and 5 on Ottawa's ice. The Rangers' third period execution was abysmal.
They were up
way too many mistakes in their own zone. Game 2, people thought that maybe Henrik Lundqvist was starting to lose a step or two between the pipes. That's not the issue. Is he not getting any younger? True. But the bottom line is the Rangers were supposed to have been much improved defensively. Well, their third period defense was really, really abysmal.
Well, let's look at game 2. They're up 5-3 with less than 2 minutes to go. And who gets those 2 goals? The one guy, Jean-Gabriel Pageau. In fact, he scored 4 goals alone in that one game. And what happened with the tying goal was you had so many Rangers players surrounding Lundqvist that I think that impeded his vision to stop the goal. Especially in Game 5. That was the day of the Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
In fact, I remember that. And that, of course, that was Derek Brassard who got the game-tying goal.
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. Brassard, the ex-Ranger, ended up killing us in the last minute or so of that game. And then, unfortunately, in overtime, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then, Jean-Gabriel Pageau got the game winner, in fact, in game 2 in overtime. In 7 overtime games, Ottawa's been in the playoffs. They're 6-1 in the extra periods.
Yep, and as it turns out, it was Ottawa that wound up getting off to a fast start in Game 6, and they, even though they wound up getting challenged in the last 55 minutes of the game, the bottom line was they were the ones that were in control the entire time. The Rangers had to be playing catch-up the entire time.
As opposed to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They had a 3-1 lead in their series against the Capitals, and they let games 5, especially game 5. They could have easily taken care of business, but Capitals came back in their home ice in that third period to then force a Game 6. And then Game 6 in Pittsburgh, and this is where the Capitals pretty much dominated Pittsburgh, winning 5-2, especially, when Washington trailed 3-1. Were trailed in that game, and they didn't even score. In fact, they shut out Pittsburgh for most of the game up until the third period, where it was Jensel and Malkin who scored, but it was too little, too late. And then came Game 7 for all the marbles, and Fleury had the performance that was from years ago. A shutout performance.
He's been a lightning rod for criticism by both Penguin fans and media, but this time he came up with probably the biggest game of his young career, which has also been marred by a lot of injuries. And
he shut out 29 goals in this game. But you know what defined the series? Pittsburgh was outshot in every single game. That's the crazy part. They were outshot every single game by Washington. It didn't matter, though. In the games that Pittsburgh won, you had guys like Crosby who contributed. You had Jensel contribute very well. Evgeny Malkin, who for weeks has had to deal with injuries. And that's the problem. They've had to deal with so many injuries, but no matter what injuries have happened, they always seem to come back.
Speaking of contributions, what contributions did Alex Ovechkin, the other superstar in that series, make to the Capitals in Game 7? None. Did not score a single point in Game 7, which once again brings up the fact that Alex Ovechkin could be the best superstar in the NHL to never win a championship. He still has his chance. He's only been in the league about 12 years.
Championship. They've never gotten beyond the second round in every single year he's been with the organization. They've never been to the conference finals.
With Ovechkin as their superstar. They've had one Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 42 years. One Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 42 years. Other than that, it's only been second round or bust for that franchise, which only leads me to believe that the Washington Capitals are right up there with the Atlanta Falcons, the Atlanta Hawks, to a lesser extent, probably the Washington Nationals, as the biggest teases in professional sports.
And what killed them was the defensive mistakes. Him, Matt Niskanen, a former Penguin, by the way, and Kevin Shattenkirk, who is going to be a young free agent. He's 28 years old. He's one of the best defensive players. He's the number one free agent that the Rangers should consider going after. If I'm them, I would make a move to get Shattenkirk because he would improve our defense significantly.
Well, we'll see.
And they couldn't clear the puck out of defensive zone, unfortunately, in this game. But you know what? Even though I might have just heard my argument, but Shattenkirk, I think, would be a tremendous upgrade for New York next year. As for the conference finals, Ottawa, this is the first time since 2007 they've been this far. While for Pittsburgh, this is yet the third year out of their last four that they've been in this position. And unfortunately, they were so tired from playing 7 games, and it really showed. And look what happened. It was Bobby Ryan, who got the game-winning goal. He was all alone, broke in through Fleury, deked him, and flipping the backhander in the open net with about 4:59 into overtime. Ottawa won 2-1, and now they're up 1-0 going to tonight's Game 2. If I'm Pittsburgh tonight, they got to bring back the intensity up. Mm-hmm. They got to be able to solve the 1-3-1 system that Ottawa has, which is difficult to defend against, and be able to score well in the neutral zone.
Yep. And while the Eastern Conference is about to go into Game 2, the Western Conference has already played their first couple of games.
Edmonton, as we all know, Nashville won Game 6, but Edmonton, of course, had a chance to go to their first finals appearance in years, and unfortunately, Nick Ritchie, the 21-year-old power forward for the Ducks, got the game, broke the tiebreaker over Cam Talbot, and they won 2-1. So the Ducks are in the finals against the Nashville Predators, and Game 1 took place actually this
Nashville is in their very first conference final, and this is their 18th or 19th season in the NHL.
18. It's amazing. 18 years they've been in the league, and they've never once been this far. And the guy who's been with this team, I mean through the good and bad, Pekka Rinne, probably having a stellar postseason performance. And they win this game 3-2 in overtime. They've had to play a lot of overtime games. And it was James Neal, another former he was a former Capitals player, got the game winner 9:24 into overtime, along with Phil Forsberg, who's been a huge contributor, and Austin Watson in regulation for the Predators. And Jakob Silverberg, what was crazy, this was in Anaheim. And guess, of course, what happens with LA fans, how casual they are going to a game.
They show up late to the arena.
And on the very first shot that the Ducks score, not many of them were even there. And guess what? They scored the goal.
Wow.
Jakob Silverberg on the very first shot. In the first 16 shot, after that, the next 16 they couldn't get anything going.
Mm-hmm.
But on the very first shot, Jakob Silverberg gets the first goal of the game. Gibson, of course, stopped 43 shots altogether for Anaheim, but at the end of the day, it was James Neal who got one on the assist from PK Subban. That trade, Montreal's regretting it, and Nashville's cashing in.
Once again, I say, how's that PK Subban trade working out for the Predators? I think it's just a little coincidental that they made it to their first conference final in franchise history with him as their big gun.
And with Roman Josi, another great two-way player. And you got this kid, Victor Arvidsson, who contributes left and right for the team. In fact, last night they played Game 2 in Anaheim. Anaheim did come back. They were down 2-0. The first 2 goals of the game were Ryan Johansson, actually. And what was just amazing was at the end of the day, the Ducks didn't let that get to them. Nick Ritchie gets the tiebreaker, breaks the tie late in the second period, and then Anaheim rose from a 2-goal deficit in the third period.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Jakob Silverberg, yet again gets another goal. They win 5-3. Even though Rinnie stopped only 22 shots, he did give up 5 goals. In fact, this is the most goals he's given up that the Predators have given up all postseason.
Mm-hmm.
They've never given up 4 goals, let alone 5 at all up until this point.
Yep.
And in fact, Rinnie hasn't given up this many goals since March 18th.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good of a goaltender he's been, and one of the reasons why the Predators are in the position that they're in. But
Yep.
the Ducks, they have relentless goal scoring too. They never let any situation get too big for them.
Yep.
They play Game 3 in Music City tomorrow.
Yeah.
Who do you think could prevail from the series?
Who prevails from this series? I personally think Anaheim is the better team, but Nashville has just so much momentum going for them right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they took the conference.
I actually like Nashville too. And here's the crazy thing: they won all 3 road series openers in this postseason. They're the team that knocked out the number 1 seeded Chicago Blackhawks in 4 games. If they can do that, and they can go toe-to-toe beating St. Louis, I think they're going to make it to the Cup this year. And wouldn't it be just awesome? And you got to love the guests. That city has, they have country music stars that actually come and sing their national anthem.
Now, one other hockey note, just because the Rangers season is over doesn't mean that the Rangers players have stopped playing games. Turns out that 4 stars on the Rangers have continued to play at the World Championships.
Zuccarello?
First off, Kevin Hayes and Brady Shea are both playing for the United States. In fact, they helped the Americans beat Slovakia in their first-round game. And the king, Henrik Lundqvist, is playing for Sweden. In fact, his teammate on the Rangers, Oscar Lindberg, joined him on Team Sweden, and the Swedes wound up winning against Denmark over the weekend.
Is Jaromir Jagr playing for the Czech Republic?
My guess is that Jaromir Jagr is playing for the Czech Republic, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. Jagr is, 43 years old?
43 years old, and I think he might be returning next year to play at his... Actually, I think he's approaching his 45th birthday. 45 years old is what his real age is, because he turned 45 in February. If he were to return next season, he would be going into his 46th birthday.
And not only that, it would be his, 25th, 26th year in the NHL. This was the guy who in 92 had the mullet haircut and won with Mario Lemieux winning the Stanley Cup championship for the Pittsburgh Penguins. In fact, they won it in 92 and in 93, those 2 consecutive years. They were a heck of a team. Actually, no, 93 wasn't the year. That was the last year Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. That was the Montreal Canadiens. So Ken Ottawa would be the first team since Montreal to finally break that Canadian dry spell. I hope not. But at the same time, I have to give it up to them, especially Carlson, who's played with hairline fractures in his leg.
Yeah.
Craig Anderson, who's had to overcome issues with his wife, who's been battling cancer, and the fact that he's able to play with that on his mind. And a lot of these players, who really were fighting hard. And Guy Boucher, her first year with the team, So it's really it's a really good collection of guys, and I'm not mad at Ottawa. I'm mad at.
I think I'm more disappointed at the Rangers and the way they just self-destructed in 3 third periods of this series than anything else. But let's see if they can regroup for next year. Now, speaking of the playoffs,
The NBA.
The NBA is now in their conference finals out west. There's one conference semifinal that's going to have a 7th and deciding game take place in the next 20 minutes, and that's Wizards and Celtics.
Game 5, of course, the Wizards they lost that game to Boston 125-101. Bradley Beal had a career-high 29-point performance. They led by as many as 26 points, and they had 16 three-pointers in that game. Then Game 6 came along in Washington, and unfortunately, Isaiah Thomas couldn't get the final three-pointer at the buzzer. It clanked off the rim, and they lost 92-91. It was John Wall with 3.5 seconds to go. Got the go-ahead basket. So
going back to the regular season, the home team has been undefeated in the series, regular season series and postseason series.
11-0. That's been for the home team. So if that's the case, tonight's game will determine who will play the Cavaliers, who won. It was 8 days ago. They beat the Raptors to win in 4 straight games. They've been waiting since, and they're going to be waiting 2 more days for the conference finals to begin. If I'm the Cavaliers, who would I rather face?
The Celtics are the best matchup for the Cavaliers because the Celtics have enough athleticism, and I think they play. I think they actually have an explosive enough backcourt that can give the Cavaliers a lot of trouble.
You mean the most difficult team? Mm-hmm. Because if they play Washington, I'll be honest.
I think the Cavaliers breeze by the Wizards, to be honest with you.
I would say not in 4 straight, though. No matter who plays, they're not going to have a sweep this time around. I think they're going to go more than 4 games.
Yeah.
I think it will be a lot. I think we'll go to Game 7 if they play Boston.
Quite possibly.
As opposed to Washington. I think that's like a 5 game. Now, in the Western Conference, as you know, last Monday was Game 7 between the Jazz and the Warriors, and the Jazz.
You mean Game 4?
No, it was Game 4. Sorry, and the Splash Brothers had a heck of a performance. Stephen Curry, 30 points. They
Bottom line is the
121-95.
Warriors have not been challenged in any game in the playoffs by either the Trailblazers or the Jazz. Now,
and then the Rockets Spurs. The Rockets lost in overtime, 110-107. Even despite Kawhi Leonard hurting his ankle in that game.
Yep.
And then Game 6 basically was the game from hell for the Beard, who unfortunately
a 10-point game for James Harden and
2 of 11 shooting. They lost 114-75. Aldridge had 28 points in this game.
Yep. So then came the series, which I think probably should be for the NBA title instead of for the Western Conference title, Spurs and Warriors. And I don't want to call it a choke job. I want to say that it's more the Warriors just refused to lose than anything else. They were embarrassed for most of the first half. And then once again, Kawhi Leonard hurts his ankle, and he winds up missing a huge chunk of Game 1.
And the Warriors, after that, capitalized with a huge 18-0 run. And that basically, and the biggest performance was in the third quarter by Stephen Curry. And especially, how about the tying three-pointer with 1:48 left in the game? And Durant scoring 10 straight points in that fourth quarter run. He had 34 points. Zaza Pachulia, 11 points, 9 rebounds. It was, and out of those 40 points that Curry scored, 19 of which were in the third quarter, and they had to overcome a 20-plus point deficit. This is the most points that the Warriors have had to overcome at halftime in their entire postseason history.
Well, it's good to see them actually get a test for a change, but to be quite honest with you, the Spurs let a golden opportunity slip away in Game 1. Now they're going to have to try and regroup for Game 2, and they're going to have to do that without Leonard because his ankle is killing him so much he's going to miss Game 2.
And this has really been the bane of their existence. They're dealing with Tony Parker, who's done for the rest of the postseason, who unfortunately injured himself in the semifinals against Houston. Now Leonard re-injuring the ankle that was injured in Game 5. against a team like the Warriors, who basically have had moments where they, there's some 3-pointers that they could have made. But then you have, like in Game 3 with Kevin Durant having that great performance against Utah. But then comes yesterday, and Stephen Curry just blows it up in the third quarter. And with the Aldridge injury, that takes away their defense right there.
Yeah.
Because he's the biggest part of their defense. Danny Green is their 3-point man. Leonard does it. He's a two-way player. And the rest of that team just does what they can do. And LaMarcus Aldridge, and along with even Lee, who would have thought David Lee is still playing? I'm shocked at this point.
Yeah.
But
this is now, it's up to LaMarcus Aldridge to try and lead his team into the next level.
And they're playing tomorrow night in Oakland. So if they want to not be a casualty like the two teams before them, they're going to really have to step it up. If they got huge leads like they did yesterday in the first quarter, keep stepping on their throats. Do not keep putting your foot on the gas and don't stop. If you do that, you're going to give the Warriors another opening like yesterday. So if I'm the Warriors, just keep making those threes and have Durant clean up the rest. Now, coming up this Sunday for you wrestling fans in Rosemont, Illinois.
Yeah, the
outside Chicago.
All-State Arena, that is.
WWE's having their next pay-per-view Backlash. This is for the SmackDown brand. Randy Orton, Jinder Mahal fighting for the championship. I'm happy that Jinder's got an opportunity. This guy's been like a mid-carder for so many years.
Yeah.
And like you said last week, it's good that the Indian, population is getting somebody who's representative of them to fight for this title.
And he may not be the last either, because just recently WWE did a tour of India, and they were scouting athletes in India, and there was a clip from WWE's YouTube page that showed one of their former stars, Albert, who's now a very, very well-known trainer. Albert did this, was conducting an exercise in which a well-known prospect had to do a bunch of rolls around the ring in a row. Do you know that this kid did 50 rolls around the ring?
Which is tough, because considering the average WWE athlete can maybe do 20 at most.
This kid did 50.
So it's really that's really something. But for
That's terrific athletic ability there, and great toughness.
Oh, definitely. I'm happy for Jinder though. I think it's about time he doesn't get looked over. But unfortunately, he's probably not going to win. I hope he does, maybe to get an opportunity. No offense to Randy, I love Randy, but they need to give their younger stars more opportunities. Now, for the SmackDown Tag Team title, you got the Usos versus Breezango. Breezango looked like a bunch of guys from Magic Mike with their cop outfits, handing out sexy tickets, apparently. Tyler Breeze and Fandango, I cannot stand these two. They are annoying. They're worse than the New Day. The New Day is a pleasure compared to them.
Well,
trust me. I know you don't like the New Day, but you'll like Breezango less. The United States title, Kevin Owens and AJ Styles. That actually has the potential that to me is a main event match. That's going to be the best match of the evening right there. And then the pay-per-view debut of the greatest import from Japan, Shinsuke Nakamura, taking on Dolph Ziggler, who has always been used to help other guys, elevate their careers. And then a 6-woman tag team match. You got Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Naomi together, which is a hell of a team, against the Welcoming Committee, which is made up of Carmella, Natalya, and Tamina Snuka.
Yeah.
I like that that pairing of Flair. But you know what's going to happen in the end? Flair's going to betray them. They're going to lose the match, and that's, it's so predictable. UFC had their latest pay-per-view this past Saturday, UFC 211, which I can't believe it's over 200 pay-per-views. They've been going on strong. And Stipe Miocic has second consecutive title defense for the heavyweight title against Junior Dos Santos, beating him with nothing but a barrage of punches in the first round, 222 into it. Then the UFC women's strawweight division, Joanna Jedrzejczyk had her seventh straight successful title defense with this matchup, beating Jessica Andrade by unanimous decision to retain her title. She's 8-0 in her career at UFC, 14-0 altogether.
And
The welterweight, Damian Maia defeated Jorge Masvidal. Featherweight, Frank Yeager defeated Yair Rodriguez via TKO. Doctor had to stop the match because one of the guys had a swelling in his left eye. And the middleweight bat, David Branch defeated Krzysztof Jotko by split decision.
there you go. Now, as far as what's going on in soccer, well, as we all know, Chelsea won the Premier League. Yesterday was a rather nostalgic day for the people at Tottenham Hotspur because they had their very last home game at their current stadium. And it was a game that they wound up winning against Manchester United. And after the game, every single one of the fans wound up walking onto the pitch. And then they had a ceremony where they honored Spurs players from the past. It was a really, really touching ceremony that they did for the former Spurs players.
And speaking of which, this is the last week of the season. And what I like about the last week is what they do is they simultaneously broadcast all the games on the entire network of NBC. So on Sunday, when you go to watch NBC Sports Network or CNBC or any NBC network at 10 a.m. to 12, you're going to have nonstop soccer being played.
Yep.
It's going to be fun.
And then after the Premier League season ends, that's when they're going to have the FA Cup because Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken, is playing Chelsea, aren't they?
Yes.
So Chelsea has a chance to pull off, I guess you could call it a double play of sorts, the Premier League and the FA Cup in the same season.
And for boxing this Saturday at Madison Square Garden, which is always great to go watch a boxing match, Terrence Crawford, undefeated 30-0 with 21 career knockouts, takes on Felix Diaz, 19-1, 9 career knockouts for the WBO, WBC, the Ring, and Lineal Light welterweight title. Part of a huge 6-card bout. I would love to go see this, especially this guy Crawford, he's a supreme knockout, and he's got a nasty left.
Yep. Checking out one note in golf. Congrats go out to young Si Woo Kim because Si Woo Kim wound up becoming the youngest golfer to win the Players' Championship.
That's right. He won with a 3-under 69 performance on the final round, and he was the only player in the entire field on that windy Sunday afternoon at TPC Sawgrass to not have a bogey.
There you go.
Especially on the par 3 17th. If you ever watch at Sawgrass, they call it the island. It's the toughest place to not get your ball in the water.
Yeah.
So right there, the fact that he was able to, on the last 2 holes, be able to not make a single mistake, he was able to win it. And now, we're coming up, the next major event will be the U.S. Open in June. And for horse racing enthusiasts, this Saturday from Pimlico Racetrack in Baltimore County, Baltimore, Maryland, the Preakness Stakes. Always Dreaming, of course, was the winner by 1 3/4 lengths, or 2 3/4 lengths at the Kentucky Derby 2 weeks ago on the 6th. Now he tries to win his next race, and this is the pairing, of course, of Todd Fletcher and John Velasquez. Can these guys win that second race?
Can they? Yes. Will they? It just remains to be seen.
And the course is a half a mile. It's a half a furlong shorter than Churchill Downs. It's the shortest race. It's 1 3/16 miles. So I think they should be able to win this race. It's Belmont that's hell on earth, where that's killed many potential Triple Crown winners. Before American Pharoah won, there were 11 horses that won the first 2 races, but never came close to winning that elusive third. So, and then Martin Truex this past Saturday at Kansas City won by pulling away from Ryan Blaney and Kevin Harvick on the late restart to win at Kansas City Motor Speedway. And the NFL a few weeks ago came out with their regular season schedule.
Yes, and in our neck of the woods, the Jets are going to open the season against the Bills
In Buffalo.
in a matchup of 2 teams who, quite frankly, we just don't know about their quarterbacks. That's one thing is for certain. You're going to have a winner or a loser. They cannot be this bad enough where they would end their season opener in a tie. But that's beside the point. The point is, while the Jets' quarterback play is either really green or really abysmal, Buffalo has decided to bring back Tyrod Taylor, and quite frankly, I really don't know why.
I actually see why. Sean McDermott, who's the new coach coming in, They really they believe in him, and the system that they have, and with the players that they're bringing in to really get some offense, especially the kid Zay Jones from East Carolina. That's going to give them another weapon to throw to, along with Sammy Watkins, if he can stay healthy. And of course, you're going to run the ball heavily with Shady and McCoy and LaShawn McCoy, as opposed to the Jets right now. They are a giant question mark. It's either the concussion, Josh McCown, Christian Hackenberg, or Bryce Petty. Pick your poison, as opposed to the Giants, who start their season on the road
against the Cowboys
Sunday night.
Now that is how you start an NFL season on a Sunday, with Giants and Cowboys. And of course, both teams coming off some rather disappointing ends to their season. The Giants had their heads handed to them by the Packers in the first round of the playoffs, and the Cowboys literally lost in the last play of the game because of a field goal made by the Packers.
It was also the catch by the touchdown by the tight end from Green Bay that set up the game-winning field goal. And what's different about this year for the Cowboys, they are now betting the entire farm on Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Because Tony Romo decided to go and be an analyst for CBS. And in fact, because of that move, now Phil Simms is being put in the studio for the pre-show. He's no longer going to be in the booth with Jim Nantz.
Really interesting. Considering the fact that Phil Simms has always been a tremendous analyst and a great sidekick for Jim Nantz on location. But now, much to Phil Simms' detriment, I would assume he has to be in the studio with James Brown, which is not such a terrible thing. But at the same time,
to be knocked from your number one
he's going to miss being on the road calling games. Now,
but with Dallas, this year,
as far as the Cowboys are concerned, Dak Prescott is coming off an outstanding rookie season. So is Ezekiel Elliott. Do the words sophomore jinx mean anything to anyone? We don't know because they haven't even played the games yet. But winning the division last year was one thing. Now the Cowboys are going to be expected to take it to a whole nother level, namely winning a Super Bowl. And it might be a little bit too much for these young men in their second seasons. As for the Giants, Eli Manning, I don't want to say that he's coming up on the twilight of his career, because he's put in 13 really good years for that franchise. And he literally has been their Iron Man. He's been there for every single game since he started the middle of his rookie year.
At least they got a tight end, though, in the draft. I think he was going to be, somebody that will help them. But the problem is the left tackle position is going to be, that's the question mark right there.
Well, you said one thing that was really important. He does have a tight end that he's going to be throwing to. He also has 3 outstanding receivers. He's got OBJ once again. He also has Sterling Shepard. Now he's got the ex-Jet Brandon Marshall.
Thank you for that reminder.
But how much longer can he survive with what's basically a shaky offensive line?
I know, especially the left side, and that's what they needed to address, honestly, in the draft. At that time, I thought they were going to get Ryan Ramczyk, but of course they didn't draft him. And now, that's just the question mark. Will their left tackle be good enough for the season? Will he be able to work on the mistakes he had that kind of, I think, hurt the Giants in their game against Green Bay? And then, the other teams that really, are we going to see another winless season, mostly winless season for Cleveland? Or with the 3-round picks that they had, are they going to have somewhat of a successful season? Especially with David Njoku, who I think is probably the best tight end in the entire draft. He's going to be somebody to rely on instead of just Gary Barnidge. And as for some of the other teams like New England this year, is it, with all the spoiling gifts that they were given, especially Brandon Cooks, another gift for Tom Brady, are they going to repeat as champions? Will they be the first team since they did it?
Well, we're only in May, which means rookie camps and then the mini camps are making their way in. Nothing to judge in regards to the mini camps, but at the same time,
it's mostly for the rookies, those mini camps. And the OTAs, the organized team activities that take place between now and June. July, of course, is training camp. August, the regular season and the Hall of Fame. No, the preseason Hall of Fame. Then September, the season begins.
So true.
That's what I love about football.
Now, with about 15 seconds left, we are going to bid you adieu.
Yes.
And thanks to everyone on the other side of the glass. So for everyone out there, I'm Jamie.
I'm Eric.
Good night, everyone.
Peace out. Love.